Oregon State and Washington State have an idea of what their schedules will be. They're going to need new quarterbacks, but there are still major questions out there.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team free. But until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions, like, comment, subscribe, rate, review. Please and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, talk about some Oregon State, Washington State stuff, quarterbacks, Aiden Childs in the portal, Cam Ward in the portal. Everything is flying around. A lot of quarterback names to watch for here. But for Oregon State and Washington State, they announced what their schedules would roughly look like, though they don't actually have it materialized just yet. But there is another question that they're facing, right? Beyond who are their quarterbacks going to be? Because it won't be Cameron Ward. It won't be DJ Uiagalelei. It won't be Aiden Childs. Aiden Childs announced that, or at least it was reported by 24/7 Sports, that he's going to be in the transfer portal. But I think there are two major questions beyond the quarterback, the personnel, who's going in the portal and everything like that, that the Beavs and the Cougs are facing. And the first major question is, what are you going to do for television broadcasts in 2024 and beyond, perhaps? And the second major question is, how is your schedule going to be viewed by the rest of the college football community? Because Oregon State, especially, off a season in which they just went 8-4, they're playing Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl. By the way, if you're talking about teams that would really like to win a bowl game, Oregon State going 9-4 with a win over Notre Dame in that matchup could go a long way for what their preseason perspective is going to be in the eyes of the rest of the college football world. But that's just thought that kind of popped into my head there. But what they're going to do on the television front remains to be seen. There is some precedent I'll talk about in just a moment here. But the other thing is, how's their schedule going to be viewed? So the schedules have not been actually announced. We don't know who the Beavs and Cougs are going to play on the field in 2024, aside from a couple of games. You know, Oregon State has got Purdue, I think, in there in a non-conference matchup. Idaho State is their FCS game. But both teams announced that they're going to have 5 Power 5 games, which really will be 4 Power 4 games in the eyes of the college football world, and then they'll play each other. Now, I consider that to be Power 5 because Oregon State, Washington State are Power 5 capable programs. We'll see what happens after the portal and whatnot, but it'll be 5 Power 5 games, 6 Mountain West games, and 1 FCS opponent. Now, neither team is eligible for the Mountain West Conference Championship because they are not a part of the Mountain West. So what is essentially going to happen here is Oregon State and Washington State are going to be viewed, and I think treated in the college football community, as FBS independents, which is obviously not the situation they deserve. It's not a great spot. They'd love to be in a power conference or the Pac having stayed together and everything like that. But is being an independent, does that mean that all hope is lost as you try to accomplish major goals as a program? I don't think the answer to that question is yes, all hope is lost. I think it's more difficult, but I do not think that it is impossible. Now, it'll depend on what teams they actually end up playing, because there's been plenty of speculation about, you know, who the power matchups are going to be, as in, you know, teams from other power conferences. Because, you know, Notre Dame, who Oregon State's about to play, I don't know that they'd play again. Maybe they would. I don't know. But Notre Dame needs a game for next year. Utah needs a game. I think Cal and Stanford both need games for next year as well. So the quality of those Power 4 teams, we don't know what's happening with the Civil War either. We know that Washington State has got Washington on there, which is huge for the Cougs. That is just a massive opportunity. And we're going to talk about Washington a little bit later in the offseason sense, later in the show today as well. But being treated as an independent, it is not unprecedented for an independent team to cobble together a schedule that is good enough. Notre Dame is an independent, by the way. They're, of course, unique, but they play a schedule that does not include a conference championship game. And yet, though it's better than what Oregon State and Washington State will be able to, put together from a conference caliber and team caliber standpoint on a week-to-week average, Notre Dame is able to make the playoff. And in the 12-team playoff, the opportunity will be there. Will they have to win certain key games? Yeah, of course. Of course they will. But let's talk about this television component, because there is actually a little bit of precedent for what Oregon State and Washington State are trying to do. Now, Washington State Athletic Director Pat Chun said on Washington State and Oregon State's TV plans, quote, "We'll work with Oregon State through the conference to identify television opportunities and partners." Essentially, what they're going to be doing is marketing individual games and selling them as their own package, not as a multi-year media rights deal, but basically selling them, a la carte. They just say, hey, we have these games. Who wants to broadcast it? And how much will you pay? So the other teams where you look to for precedent on this particular model on the television front, UConn, Army, until Army announced they were joining the American Conference, and UMass. So what those teams do is, based on what I was able to research and find out about all this sort of stuff and how it works, is UConn worked with CBS Sports Network. Doesn't mean that's going to be what Oregon State and Washington State end up doing. It's just as an example. Maybe ESPN would pay for a couple games, or maybe they'd want to put them on ESPN Plus. I don't know. I don't know what the television options there and how exceptional they'd potentially be. But UConn, Army, UMass, obviously Notre Dame's got their own contract with NBC, but they have individual deals with CBS Sports Network to broadcast the home games, and they basically pay, not a ton of money. I think the number I saw was for UConn about $100,000 per game, depending on the caliber of opponent, to put on CBS Sports Network. That wouldn't be the worst place for Oregon State and Washington State to have their home games broadcast, but that is the essential element, is where do the games get broadcast when a football game is played in Corvallis and in Pullman? Because when they play, we heard a lot about and I talked about as well on the show, potential scheduling partnership with the Mountain West, and it would be, 7 games and this sort of stuff. And then reports where, no, it's not going to be that, but then it is kind of a scheduling partnership and whatnot. The important factor here on the television side is that the home team is responsible for putting together the television broadcast. The home team. So when Oregon State and Washington State travel to Mountain West stadiums, those games will be on television, courtesy of the Mountain West media deal. Now, when the Mountain West teams go to Corvallis and Pullman, that's what still remains to be seen. Maybe CBS Sports Network or Fox, who are the media partners for the Mountain West, would say, hey, we already have these teams. We want to raise brand awareness, and Oregon State and Washington State are an opportunity to do that. And that's, a more appealing game than, say, Army or Hawaii against San Jose State or something like that. Maybe they would put it on there. But that's essentially where they are, is trying to navigate those particular waters, putting together the best schedule they can, making sure that people are able to watch them. And then the next step will be, figuring out what kind of product they can put on the field. So Aiden Childs is in the transfer portal, or at least that's what 24/7 Sports reported. I don't know if he's made an official statement. He has not been the only name to pop up as a transfer portal target at the quarterback position. There are many, many others. There are many reasons why you should look at Game Time as well, because when you're buying tickets to your next big event, you shouldn't have to worry. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It's a quarterback palooza out there. Bonanza. It's hectic. It's crazy. There are a lot of names. Aiden Childs, the latest. So Oregon State is officially looking for a quarterback. I mean, it looks like it'd be Ben Gulbranson for the bowl game against Notre Dame, which, by the way, they've won football games with Ben Gulbranson before. That's a tall order, though, and that was definitely not a surprise, though a disappointment for the Beavs. And, I had said that Trent Bray had to make that priority number one, but Childs is just going to have too many other big-time offers. And I don't know where those two Oregon State quarterbacks end up. I would watch for DJ Uiagalelei to UCLA, and I would watch for Aiden Childs to follow Jonathan Smith over to Michigan State. But by the way, Tyler, who sends in questions all the time, appreciate you. YouTube comments or Twitter, always great ways to send in comments or questions to get answered here on the show. You'd asked about the television deal. If you have any other questions, let me know. But hopefully I answered your question as to how they're going to try and navigate that particular space. But the quarterback carousel is arguably crazier than the coaching carousel. I mean, it is all over the place. And you have just got so many different names out there who can make an impact. And I had a reply from, I think, a Utah fan on Twitter about, how many teams are going to have the same quarterback in 2024. If you go up and down the current Pac-12 teams, the only one I can think of is Noah Fifita at Arizona. Okay. Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams off to the NFL. Cameron Rising didn't play this year. He'll start for Utah next season. Oregon State, new quarterback. Washington State, new quarterback. Arizona State, I have heard rumblings that Jaden Rashada might not be the guy there next year. UCLA, Dante Moore is leaving. The Stanford, maybe Ashton Daniels is a starter next year. They're bringing in Elijah Brown, the 4-star from Mater Dei. We'll see who wins the job there. Cal could have the same starting quarterback. I think Fernando Mendoza is Cal's got a new offensive coordinator because Jake Spavital left to go to Baylor to be the OC. But Mendoza maybe at Cal. We don't know what Shedeur Sanders is going to do yet. I mean, you're going to have way fewer than half of the current Pac-12 teams that have the same quarterback next year. So few things to watch for before we talk about the wild world of college football schedule, which is completely backwards. I think that for Oregon State, there are going to be options available in the transfer portal. One name that I would legitimately watch for is Jayden de Laura. So de Laura, if you recall, was at Washington State, went down to Arizona, got hurt this year, and Noah Fifita won the starting job, deservedly so. Arizona, by the way, is playing Oklahoma, I believe, in the Alamo Bowl. That could be an awesome football game. And if Arizona puts up a 10-win season, boy, that'd feel pretty good if you're a Wildcats fan. Take a W7 into the Big 12 next year. They'd be one of the favorites for sure. So I look at Jayden de Laura and say, well, he's a guy who has started and won games at the Power 5 level all over the place. Now, is he, an NFL kind of quarterback? No, he is not. But if you're Oregon State, I would ask. I mean, currently, you don't have an option that's on your radar. And look, there is a lot that can change between now and the start of next year. Not doubting that. I'm just saying that is a forgotten name who I think would be willing to go and play at, a hybrid Mountain West Pac-12 kind of school there that Oregon State unfortunately is now. I think he'd unquestionably be the starting quarterback unless they brought in somebody else. I would just watch for that particular name. One name I wouldn't watch for is Bryson Barnes. He's going to play in Utah's bowl game against Northwestern in the Las Vegas Bowl and then transfer. I don't think Barnes is going to be a super hot commodity unless he goes down to a G5 team. I mean, he's not going to start next year once Cam Rising comes back from injury, so he'd be the backup again. So I totally understand it. I think Utah fans do as well as to why he'd leave. But That's a guy who led Utah to an 8-4 season this year, had some ups and downs, got benched at one point, earned the starting job back. And, Utah's a good team with Bryson Barnes at the helm. I don't think that that's a sort of option. I think Oregon State can do better than Bryson Barnes. I'd rather have Jayden de Laura, even though de Laura certainly has his flaws. He throws a lot of interceptions and sometimes tries to do too much. Oregon State probably has to make an offensive coordinator hire before they can start talking about, what they're going to do at the quarterback position. But I expect that hire to come, within the coming days. So I think that is just an interesting name to follow, because that's a guy who, by the way, was a part of Arizona building to what they are right now. Fafita has won the job, should have it, will have it, and all that sort of stuff. But de Laura was the guy that was leading that resurgence with Arizona before Fafita came in and proved that he's a stud. And I think that's a guy that could go somewhere and maybe not take you to a conference championship, but can make you competitive. Can make you competitive, be a stopgap, kind of capable quarterback for a year or so. And I'd watch for that. I think Barnes is someone who will probably end up at, like an American or Mountain West kind of school or a Conference USA. I think he stays out West. He's, an in-state kid, but I don't think that that's as appealing of an option. Not that Barnes is bad. I just don't think that he's got the playmaking ability, and there's a ceiling with him at quarterback, even though stylistically, yeah, he could fit at Oregon State because he's playing in the same sort of system like that they run in Corvallis compared to what they do in Salt Lake City. So yeah, maybe, but here's another name to watch for, and this is a fascinating one. Now, Washington is, of course, in the college football playoff, and all their attention right now is on Texas, and talked about that with Roman extensively on yesterday's show. Go check it out if you missed it, and everything that they've accomplished this year. Washington's offense is predicated on throwing the football. Okay, running is secondary. They want to drop back and throw the ball a lot. There was a crystal ball that 24/7 Sports tweeted out. This has not happened yet, nor has it been confirmed, and we'll see what timeline sort of exists because no one knows for certain at this point. But there was a crystal ball out there for Will Rogers at Mississippi State to go to Washington. That would be an outstanding fit. I don't know if he's got the high-end talent that Michael Penix does. But Will Rogers is a guy who ran the air raid under the late Mike Leach at Mississippi State, who can throw 40 to 60 times a game if you want him to, who is an experienced quarterback, just like Penix was. And if you put him in that Jayden de Laura offense, and I suspect that, by the way, my prediction did not come true that Ryan Grubb will be the next head coach at Boise State because they hired their interim head coach. So I still anticipate Ryan Grubb becoming a head coach this offseason. There are still jobs open out there. If, whether Grubb is there or not, that offense is Jayden de Laura's. That is what he does. Throw the football all the time. Look at what he did with Jake Haener down at Fresno State. I think he could have similar success if he goes with Will Rogers from Mississippi State. I think that fit would be so good. Now, Washington's about to lose their top 3 receivers to the NFL draft. Newsflash. Washington recruits at a decent level, I'd say, compared to where they, perform on the field, certainly this year. But the transfer portal is a thing. Julian Fleming from Ohio State's in the portal. There's a wide receiver from Texas A&M that was a highly rated recruit. There are a bunch of names and options out there, and I don't remember if Jeremy Bernard would be back next season for Washington. I have to double check, but you can put together weapons on the outside pretty easily. But you need a quarterback that fits what you are trying to do. And yeah, by the way, don't know if he would do it, but Cameron Ward would be a great fit at Washington as well. But I saw that crystal ball for Will Rogers, and I thought to myself, that's a fit. That's a fit. I don't know if he turns into Michael Penix, but what I do know is that Jayden de Laura, every time he's been close to Michael Penix, Penix has been at his absolute best. This is a guy who runs his offense directly through his quarterback and the arm of said quarterback. And I think that for Will Rogers to be a name that is in the conversation there, I think there could be a pretty darn seamless transition for the former Mississippi State Bulldog. So that's everything on the quarterback carousel for now. This is going to be a recurring topic on the show because, my goodness, there are so many big time names that can make an impact for 2024 and beyond. And my goodness, we've still got more to get to on the show. We always do. You can always go to LinkedIn Jobs too, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That's billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. It just is. Hiring is easy when you have LinkedIn Jobs because they give you so many qualified candidates. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, you might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why they're there to help you out. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, last couple things to wrap up today's show. Back into the mailbag. YouTube comments or Twitter at Smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. Appreciate all of you out there that make this show such a blast to do. And I love answering your questions, and you guys have some great ones. So this from David Spencer. I'll be interested in hearing your take on this. I'm not a fan of the portal in December. Why? The Beavers and/or Bruins will lose their starting quarterback before their bowl game. I do not know why this cannot happen after the bowl game. I 100% agree with you, David. College football is a great sport run by below average people. I mean, I agree, though not everyone did, with the College Football Playoff Committee's decision to put in Alabama over Florida State. With that being said, Boo Corrigan is the chair of the College Football Playoff Committee. He made that decision and then publicly on live television, when asked about Liberty getting the nod over SMU into the Fiesta Bowl to play Oregon, which they shouldn't, by the way. It should have been SMU. They play in a better conference. He said, quote, well, Liberty just continued to win. Oh, dude. It's just the epic level of PR incompetence in that statement underscores the point that I am making. This is the greatest sport in the world, and it is governed and run by people who don't know what they're doing and who don't have the sport's best interests in mind, or frankly, don't even know what is in the best interest of the sport writ large. So I am completely against all of this portal stuff and the early signing window happening in December ahead of bowl season. You are making the life of a head football coach so astronomically difficult and overwhelming to put those two things together. And it doesn't even make sense from a college football marketing standpoint, right? So think about professional sports. The NBA has become more about the offseason than the actual season because they make all these big moves and it's interesting and fun to think about and talk about and debate. But then the season comes around and I don't think Bradley Beal's played a game for the Suns yet. Like, it's just, the stars are not playing a lot, right? The NFL has leaned into that because, the hot stove in baseball or the NBA offseason became such big topics to generate interest when your league isn't even playing games on television, that the NFL leaned into it. And now there's all sorts of talk and debate, trades and free agent signings and where could they go and all this sort of stuff. But the calendar lines up perfectly because during the season, that's the only thing that matters. We're still in the middle of the college football season. Yes, some teams are into the offseason, but not everybody is. And so if you're talking about how to generate the most interest for a sport, just from a PR and marketing standpoint, there is no way that packing major storylines and talking points in the midst of the season is the best way to do it. If you want year-round interest in the sport, you need to have compelling storylines all year round. Right now, you don't need the transfer portal and the coaching carousel and recruiting to be major storylines to generate interest in the sport. There's plenty else going on to talk about, which would be the actual season and the national championship and bowl games and everything like that. So if the sport had its head screwed on straight, and if its leadership did, it would say, no, take out the early signing window in December, because that's literally right before a bowl game. Take out the transfer portal window opening in December ahead of the bowl games, and have that drive the discussion and interest surrounding the sport once the season is actually over. Keep it with the February signing day. And maybe have, the first transfer portal window, have it go at the end of January. I think that would make a lot of sense, because there's one portal window that's open now. There's another one that's open in the spring. So if you want to assure the most attention being paid to the sport, you would say the season goes from the end of August to the beginning of January. Now you want the offseason topics to take over. Open the transfer portal window the week after the national championship game. Everyone talks about that for a month. Then you have National Signing Day factored in with the portal. Then you start looking ahead to spring football. Then you have another transfer portal window open. Then you talk about things post-spring football. And then in the summer, talk about everything that you want to. But I think it's ridiculous. I think it's bad for coaches, and I don't think it's the best thing for the sport. So hopefully I laid that out correctly. Last question here from JT. Portal, NIL, and quarterbacks. Which category of quarterback is more successful in the NFL draft? Excellent quarterbacks winning a lot in lesser conference, or excellent quarterbacks on bad Power 5 teams? We should have plenty of examples to draw from. The answer is there's no one right answer here, because a great quarterback in the NFL, he can come from all over the place. I think Caleb Williams could be great from USC. Past USC quarterbacks have not been great. Past Ohio State quarterbacks haven't been great. CJ Stroud is. Every individual player is different. I think there is something to the idea of, playing at a school like Alabama, where you have such good wide receivers and such great offensive lines and such a great team. You don't have to do as much. And then when you go into the league and you play for a team that is in a complete and utter state of rebuilding, then yeah, that's going to be a lot different than what you're accustomed to playing on the football field. But you can see Patrick Mahomes didn't win a lot in college, played at an average football school in Texas Tech. Guy might be the best quarterback in the history of the sport. Carson Palmer, number 1 pick out of USC, had a good but not great career. Andrew Luck came out of Stanford. What had ever come out of Stanford at the quarterback position other than John Elway before? Well, it's those two guys. So it depends entirely on the individual. I think circumstances matter, but I don't think that, the narrative about, like, for example, when Justin Herbert was coming out of Oregon, there were some talking points with regards to, well, it's another Oregon quarterback. Joey Harrington didn't work out. Mariota didn't quite work out. Yeah, no, Herbert's a stud. Herbert's a stud. That's top 10 quarterback in the league. Like, every guy is different, right? I was a big CJ Stroud fan. I had this debate with my brother, actually. He said, no, he's going to be like every other Ohio State quarterback. I was like, I don't know. I think I like this guy. He's really, really good. So it depends on the individual, and, your circumstances can be taken into account, but they do not define what your NFL career is actually going to end up being. Good question, though. I like it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.